let's look at how to exercise this muscle of inner authority in terms of teaching procedures. And we'll spend a good chunk of time on this because there's just so many strategies and it's so valuable. So we'll start broadly by looking at assumptions about procedures. Think about it like going down a funnel. We start broadly with assumptions and we go down to very specific strategies you can take away and use right away on Monday without a whole lot of practice. So, assumptions first. Please call out the page number this is on in your handout. Page 4. Please turn to page 4. Behavior and procedure are taught in the same ways that content is taught. Teaching is teaching, whether we're teaching how to line up for recess or how to solve the quadratic equation. It's the same basic formula. And it took me years to kind of get this. I call it an algorithm or a formula. And before I share that formula, there are formulas or algorithms in most things that we do. For example, I was a carpenter for a number of years before I became a teacher, and it took me years to realize there's a basic algorithm for carpentry. And it's the same for carpentry, electrical, plumbing, masonry, even dentistry. Same basic formula. What is it? You take an object, you shape it, and you attach it to another object. Do that over and over again, and soon you've got a house. Right? Or a crown, or a bridge, or whatever it is. And so it's the same basic form. Now for teaching, it's a different algorithm. For teaching, it's give a vision of the whole, break it into steps, teach the steps, connecting them to the whole, and check for understanding. And that's what teaching is. I'll do it again. Vision of the whole, break it into steps. Teach the steps while connecting to the whole, and check for understanding. The check for understanding does not happen just at the end. It happens all the time, constantly. For example, right now I'm checking that the temperature in the room is a little high, and I'm just scanning the room to see how people... There's a constant check, whether it's for temperature or for learning, whatever it is. And we're constantly taking a look to see how are the kids learning? And so it's constant. But that's a simple formula, and that's true when we're teaching procedures, not just content, and that's the key. So that's the first assumption. The second one is that procedures are the railroad tracks and content is the train. We need to lay the tracks down at the beginning of the school year and polish and maintain them throughout the year so the train of content has a speed and a direction in which it can go. A speed and a direction in which it can go. Now, before I go on to the next piece about this, as I share that idea about laying those tracks down at the beginning of the year, oftentimes a yeah but comes up or a concern comes up in teachers' mind, especially for beginning teachers. A lot of beginning teachers think that how you start the school year off will determine the quality for the rest of the school year. So if you look at your classes, say sometime in mid-November, and you see, well, it's not going so well, but I guess I'm toast until next year. Not the case. You can always make changes. It's never too late in the school year to make changes in your system and how you do it. The difference is if you start the school year off on a good note, you'll notice the kids buying in within 4 or 5 days. You'll start to see a buy-in. If you make a major change in the middle, it can take twice as long, 8 to 10 days before you really see that magic start to happen. So many times working with teachers over the years, we come up with an action plan, great, I'll come back next week to see how it's going. I come back the next week and they're not doing it. And I say, what happened? Oh, it wasn't working. Well, how long did you give it? 4 days. Twice as long, 8 to 10 days to see the magic happen. So it's never too late to make the change. Now, a lot of teachers say, well, how do you justify making a change without going into inner apology? I'll give you 2 examples. Okay, here's from inner authority first. Class has been getting a little too noisy lately, so we're going to try something different. Kids know, because they want to learn, right? That's the assumption. Now they might complain, oh yeah, noisy, blah, blah. Like 15, 20 seconds. Great, thank you very much. Any more complaints? Okay, let's get started. You're going to test me? Here's the test. Great, I passed the test. Great, let's learn. So it's a whole orientation from inner authority, whereas from inner apology, it's like, it's been noisy and I don't know what to do, so what are we going to... It's a whole different perspective, and it communicates a very different message to the students. And so sometimes the solutions or things I offer really do work very differently from inner authority versus sometimes they'll work in both and help you grow in that direction. So enough said about that, about changes in the middle of the school year. Let's go back to procedures. Procedures. Railroad tracks, content is the train. My challenge for you is to try and overteach procedures to your students. Try and teach procedures too much. Now, I've observed and coached about 150 teachers over the years, maybe 90 beginners and 60 veterans. I have never once seen a teacher overteach procedures. Now, some mentors have told me they've seen it, so I know it's possible, but the truth is it's very unlikely, because if you shoot really high, you'll get it just right. When we set up the microphone this morning, we set it too high, and then we went back down to the right volume. That's how you find out what it is. So try and overteach procedures. If your kids tell you, why are we doing this? We already know this. then you know you've almost taught them enough. But it's almost impossible to overteach. Let me give you a couple of examples of procedures. How about kids sharpening pencils? That is a classroom procedure. How about teacher distributing completed work to kids? Each of those procedures the teacher has choice as to how they're going to do it, and the procedures have to be taught. It just doesn't work like that. It has to be taught and reinforced. So those are some examples of classroom procedures. So when I say the word go, please turn to a partner or two where you're sitting, and please take 47 seconds to make a verbal list of all the classroom procedures you can think of. Just say it out loud, back and forth with each other, 47 seconds, ready, and go. And thanks for that response to the chime, and welcome back. So I would suggest if we added up all the procedures you just talked about, we'd have hundreds of procedures. There are hundreds of classroom procedures. The bad news is every procedure needs to be taught. The good news is once the kids know them, they know them. Some of them are so simple, once they know them forever. Some are not so simple, some are simple. For example, here's a simple one. Let's pretend for a moment that I'm your teacher for the next 5 seconds, and my name is Mr. Smith. Good morning, class.
Good morning, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, now were you born with the knowledge of how to respond to that prompt? It's not in your DNA, right? Some teacher early in your childhood taught you, good morning, teacher, and it's solid forever. So some procedures, very simple, some very complex. I taught one class of PE for several years with the at-risk high school kids. They didn't dress out, they just came to my classroom, I took attendance and made announcements, and we go to the field or the gym. So here's a typical PE announcement. Class, yesterday, we played volleyball. I want to commend you on how well you went to the gym. No one was banging in the lockers or looking in the windows of their classes. You got there efficiently. That's great. Now, today we're playing volleyball again. I remind you, volleyballs are for hands only. Any questions? Great. Let's go. Well, that announcement takes me about 18 to 20 seconds. And in it, I cover 2 key volleyball procedures. I happen to have 6. If I don't cover 3 per day, or 2 per day, and cycle them every 3 days, what do you suppose happens to the volleyballs in the gym on the 4th day? You know the drill. The classic, kids booting it around the gym with the classic teenage excuse going, what? You never said. I didn't know. It was her. It was him. It wasn't me. Oh, please, one more chance. Oh. Can you relate? Right? So I became a fanatic, a zealot. Every day in PE class for years, I consciously taught a minimum of 2 procedures. And this is my suggestion for all of you today. That from now until you retire, consciously teach a minimum of 2 procedures per class or lesson. Consciously teach a minimum of 2 procedures per class or lesson. Let's flesh out what this looks like. First of all, if you teach kindergarten, you are already teaching more than 2, right? So just double it. If you teach a block schedule, double it. If you don't teach kindergarten or a block schedule, double it anyway. It is almost impossible to overteach procedures. Just give it your best shot. More parameters. PE teachers know that once the kids are on the field, it's hard to teach them much of anything. The procedure is... So we do it early while they have their full attention. But classroom teachers sprinkle them throughout. And I suggest that you write it into your lesson plan. If you're going to take the time to craft in writing your lesson plan for content, take the time to craft in writing your lesson plan for procedure. It is just as important, if not more important. And it's not enough, I suggest, to map out your whole lesson and put one word about the procedure. The procedure needs to be taught in the same detail as the content, so it has the same weight as the content. And just like with content, you want to alternate between auditory, visual, and kinesthetic teaching of procedures. Auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. The last example I gave was all 3. About forming groups of 4. Auditory, I told them what to do. Visual, it's on the overhead. Kinesthetic, content-free practice. You don't have to do all 3, but it helps. So auditory, you tell them. Visual, on the board, on an easel, on the overhead, on a handout. And kinesthetic is they actually practice content-free. So alternate these through. Now, what happens when kids say, you're doing these procedures? Kids say, why are we doing this? We already know this, right? I always have the same response. I ask them, do you think Olympic champions ever practice? We are honing and maintaining our procedural edge in this classroom. We are staying in tip-top procedural condition. It just works. Nonverbal procedure strategies. In the area of nonverbals, we'll focus on visuals. And inside of visuals, we'll start with rubrics. So I'll give examples from elementary and secondary. Here's an example from elementary. One of the procedures elementary teachers often have a hard time with is getting kids to line up. So here's what you can do. Use rubrics. Have the kids form 5 different lines. Number them 1 through 5. A 1 is a poor line, a 5 is a perfect line. They need a 5 to start walking. Now they have a common language, and they'll tend to self-correct. Come on, guys, we look like a 3. Let's go. Just that alone. The idea behind rubrics is you take a complex set of expectations and you condense them into one word or one image. And it communicates everything you want in a very efficient way. So just putting the line they want into a number is great. Now let's take this and go in different directions with this. One secondary class, a teacher's has the kids do rubrics for readiness to learn. And she says, okay, let me see a 1. And the kids are diving across the table, chairs in the air, feet in the air, grabbing each other, drooling like this. She goes, okay, let me see a 5. All the seats are up, kids are like this. Totally focused. So now the teacher's teaching, and every once in a while she'll pause and she'll say, what number are we? The kids look around. And they don't say, we look like a 3. It's all nonverbal. What number are we? What do we need? Let's see it. Great. And she keeps going. So fast, because they know exactly what is expected of them. To continue the rubric idea, a friend of mine came over the other day and she was talking about how her son, her 5-year-old son, is really loud, inappropriately loud. Like she's in the kitchen, he's yelling, Mom! And she's tried everything to get him to quiet down. I said, have him do rubrics, 1 through 5. A 1 is a whisper, a 5 is a yell. And teach each number and what's appropriate for each social situation. And what she said was, as soon as she finished teaching him, he had it, because now he knew what to do. The basic assumption is when we want kids to succeed, whether it's content or procedure or behavior, and they're not succeeding, first thing is to assume the best about kids, that they want to succeed. If they're not succeeding, break it into smaller steps and teach the steps. And ultimately, the third assumption is sometimes when kids are hungry, the best thing we can do is feed them. Sometimes they need to eat. So if I told her to make sure that her son has a chance, at least every once in a while, to do a 5, because he's 5 years old. He wants to yell. He wants to feel and hear himself. So give him a chance to do 5s. But let him know what's appropriate and what's not. And so it worked really well. So rubrics work incredibly well. Now let's give you one for K-12. How about this one? I'm not dismissing the class until the desks are clean, lined up, organized, and everyone is seated. Well, kids have different definitions of those words, don't they? I'm seated. Right? Well, I got a pet peeve. I can't stand it when kids put their packs on before the bell rings to end class, right? So I teach them the 5 rubrics for dismissal. A 5, no packs, 4 pack. Okay? And we'll get to this in a sec. Let's go back for a second and look at the lining up. The kids lining up. Numbers 1 through 5. To close the deal, take photographs of them in their 5 lines. Put the photographs over the door, number them 1 through 5. So now, you're my students, I'm your teacher, I'm standing in the doorway, you want out. Above the doorway are the 5 pictures. I don't say a word, I just look at you and I go like this. I can help you out. Not a word has to be spoken so fast. Anytime we don't have to speak to teach a procedure, we are golden. So now we look at the rubrics for dismissal, what I call dismissal formation. On my wall above the classroom, we have the 5 dismissal formation diagrams. They could be photographs of the kids or simply diagrams of what it's supposed to look like. Number 4, desks are clean, lined up, organized, everyone is seated, 2 kids have their packs on. Remember, the teacher, not the bell, dismisses the class. So the bell has rung, I'm standing in front of the class, I look at the kids, I go like this, and I wait, because they need a 5 to start walk, just to leave. And the kids look at me and they go, take your pack off. The pack goes off, I step 5, step to the side, and they go. It is so efficient. It's so efficient. Now, you don't need rubrics, just images, visuals, photographs, drawings, pictures, stick figures, diagrams. They all work equally as well. With photographs, there's some fun things that you can do. For dismissal, take a photograph of the kids in their dismissal formation. And again, it could be the kids or it could just be the desks with the chairs. Run it through the computer onto the overhead, turn it on. You never have to say another word about dismissal. You just turn the overhead on and the kids go, it's a dismissal photo, and they start to clean. This works age 2 to age 95. It's just universal. It just works across the board. It's just so fast. So many ways to do this. How about setting up labs in science? Aerial photograph of the lab table with the materials how they're supposed to be. through the computer on the overhead, turn it on, tell the kids you've got 39 seconds to form your teams around the lab table set up like this, go. Never again do you have to describe the details because it's there in the photograph. You can do this in a photograph, you can do it with a drawing, you can do it on the whiteboard. The nice thing about overheads, with a photograph or drawing on the overhead, is you can use that overhead over and over again every time you do that lab setup. And you never have to say it again. Just set it up and go. How about putting supplies away? Art supplies in the trays, PE supplies in the closet, books in the bookshelf. Spines aligned, ordered with. Get your bookshelf organized. Take photographs of how things are supposed to look, put them where they go. Kids will tend to put things away according to photographs. I got an email from a teacher. She said she now does this with her 3-year-old at home. She said, he can't read, but he loves to play cleanup. Mommy, can we play that cleanup game again? It's a game. Just match the photo to the bedroom. Another email from a teacher. She said she now does this at home with her spouse. She said, my husband goes to the bathroom. On the wall of the bathroom is a picture of the toilet with the seat cover down. And it works. How about substitute teachers? Wouldn't it be great if the sub walked into your classroom before school starts and on your desk is a photograph of your class or photographs of your class's kids sitting in their seating chart. Name of the kid written next to the face. Now the sub knows exactly where the kids are supposed to sit and what their names are before the kids ever show up for school. Saving a huge hassle for the sub and for you the next day. How about headings on papers? How many of you require or ask kids to put headings on their papers? Please raise your hand. Quite a lot of you. Okay, so here's how you do it. I would not do this on overhead because it's so epidemic, you don't have to put it on. Get a piece of butcher paper, put it in the front of the classroom, and make it as a piece of spiral notebook paper and put your heading on it. Say it's name, date, class. But what I would do is I would color code it. Okay? And let's say red, green, blue. And the reason is, let's say, is it Nico? Okay, Nico's my student and has finished and doesn't have the heading on the paper, right? So I look and I say, hey, Nico, got to put your heading on the paper. She goes, okay, great. She looks at, great, but never looks at the picture, right? So if I say, Nico, green, oh, the heading, writes the heading down, and now looking at the rubric rather than at me, so I get to train my students to focus on the visual rather than on me, so the colors can close that deal. Of course, if your kids are colorblind, you have one colorblind kid, use italics, bold, and underline. There you go. Let me give you another example. I'll give you two more. This one is just kind of eye-opening for the secondary teachers, and kind of funny. Was working in Arkansas, had a first grade teacher say that her kids love to tattle. Of course, only in Arkansas, right? Right. So she came up with a solution. She said it worked incredibly well. She said she drew a picture of an ear on the sideboard. The kids would line up just for a chance to tattle to the ear. And it worked incredibly well. Isn't that why? Secondary teachers go, wow, why did I sign up to teach high school? Right? Now, some elementary teachers say they put a picture of the president on the sideboard and kids will line up to talk to the president. There's a line of kids out the hallway. I want to talk to the president. It's kind of scary, but it works. Now, one last one, and this will bridge the gap between procedure and content. I mentioned earlier that I taught one class of wood shop for several years to the at-risk high school kids. And in that shop class, I took photographs of the really cool, really good finished projects, put them on the wall as inspiration for the kids to do their next project. But here's the key. I learned to take a series of photographs of the stages of construction of the key projects, of 5 to 7 photographs, and put them on the wall. So now we've got Amelia's in my shop class, in the wood shop class, and she finishes step 2 for her toolbox. Normally what she'd do is, hey, everybody, I'm done. What do I do next? Everybody stop, look at me. Instead of doing that, she just gets up, goes to the wall, sees the photograph for step 3, goes back to her table, and keeps working. I was out of a job. Woohoo! Right? Because for 1,000 times before I figured this out, I had to say what step 3 was for the toolbox. I never had to say it again because the visuals closed the deal.